Appreciate you jumping in there. How's that? Is that better?
Yep. Yeah, good to go now. Perfect. Appreciate it.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. So just to reiterate here, right, kind of the old way that we walked through and the approach that we're able to implement with Incorta, really getting all that data in its source shape from those disparate different source systems, loading that into Incorta and kind of setting the model up for the business users to really being able to use that self-service, go in and grab the data they need, answer those questions, and as those other questions arise, create those insights and dig deeper into new insights within just a couple minutes there. So through that old way, there's a few other challenges that start to kind of pop up, and challenges that we've seen at really most of the clients that we've worked with Incorta over the years here. So touch on that ETL piece, right? Often changing that source shape or pre-aggregating that data to get it into shape to report on and get analytics from just takes quite a bit of time. Data refresh times. I know Chris Bergeron during our panel here mentioned the ability to go from bi-weekly or monthly reports to actually being able to have those collectors go in on a day-to-day basis. And as soon as they log in the morning, they know that data is correct and that data is up to date. Poor query responses. I think a lot of people will relate to this. We like to call it kind of the coffee report, right? When you run a query, open up a dashboard or a report or whatever it is, and you start to see that mouse spinning. So you go grab a cup of coffee, and when you come back, hopefully that's done and you can get back to work. Actionable insights, mentioned what happens when you need to dig deeper into those questions, without going into those other IT channels, really enabling that self-service, so you can dig down into the business questions that you have, get down to the root cause of whatever problem you're trying to solve or opportunity you're trying to go after, to really take actions on those insights for your business. And these are, again, challenges that we've seen really across the board with many of the companies that we've worked with, and we've been really successful in simplifying those challenges, overcoming those pain points with Incorta. And the way that we've really been able to do that is because, one of many ways is because Incorta is that end-to-end analytics platform. So able to go from that data acquisition phase, wrangle those different source systems together, whether those are operational or transactional systems, external data, CRM data, whatever that may be, getting it all into one place, creating those kind of simplified data models so all those tables can talk to each other, and those business views so the business analysts and business users are able to see exactly kind of what they're looking for and get to that data consumption phase and start creating those dashboards. And again, with that Incorta philosophy, because we're not changing that source shape of the data, as new data becomes available, as there's new data that we want to go after, we're able to just add that onto the existing data model. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to create different star schemas or cubes or anything like that. We can just, very quickly, within minutes, augment that data, which we'll show here today, and get some insights that we weren't able to previously get before. So with that, let me actually hop into the tool here. Again, hopefully that just kind of gives you an idea of kind of where we're coming from and the problems that we're trying to solve and have been successful with solving with Incorta here. But I think it's powerful to actually see it in action. So let me just log in here. This is just the Incorta splash screen. So we have a demo tenant set up. Certainly we see some clients split up their tenants into development and test, or could have separate instances as well. So quite a bit of flexibility there. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in here quick. And just to give you kind of a preview of where we're going to end up today, I'm going to jump into this example dashboard here. And here you can see kind of what we're working with and the end goal that we have. So we're going to be working with a fictional electronics retailer and really focused on some year-to-date and year-over-year views of their revenue, kind of at a company level, at a store and product level, and then also digging into some external data, bringing in some data wasn't originally within the database that we're using, but we're able to bring it in easily, kind of connect it back and get a different cut and spin on the data here as well. So we'll kind of go through this process, but again, I'm going to start totally from scratch, just bringing in the data all the way to the dashboard phase and show you how quickly and easily kind of we can get to these insights and start to make some decisions here. So I'm going to work right to left here, kind of from this data side, and again, get back to the content and the dashboards here. So on this data tab, the first thing you're going to see is we have a couple SQL Server databases set up here. This Contoso Retail database is the one that we're going to use for today's demonstration. So I can just go ahead and test that connection, make sure that's live and we're good to go. And it looks like we are. But I'll also highlight here just the kind of breadth of available data sources that are available right out of the box with Incorta as well. So whether that's DB2 or Oracle, whether they're different web services or web stores, really kind of wherever the data is, we're typically able to go out there and grab it and make good use of it. And also have the ability to do a custom SQL connection as well, which is something we've used when we're going after, legacy systems that may not be quite as popular in today's day and age. And then the other side of the data equation here is the local data files as well. So I mentioned that we're going to bring in some external kind of tax revenue data to supplement the data we already have within our database. These are just CSVs or Excel files we can load up right into Incorta, and again, very quickly start to kind of leverage those. So moving on to the schema here. So schema is really just a collection of tables, fields, and relationships that we can organize into different functional areas or different use cases or business areas here. And what we're going to do, obviously have some schemas already built in this tenant, but again, we're going to start totally from scratch, actually bring in the data, model the data, and get all the way to that dashboarding phase. So here, I could create a schema from scratch. I'm going to actually use Incorta Schema Wizard, which is just going to make things a little bit easier for us as we go through this. So I'll go ahead and just enter a name for the schema here. We'll call this Contoso Sales. And then I'm just going to point it to that Contoso retail data source that we highlighted in the last data tab here as well. Go ahead and hit next. And then what Incorta is going to do is it's actually going to connect to that data source and kind of give us an understanding of what's available and what's ready within that database. So here we can see all the different tables that are available to us in that database. And I'm just going to go down the line here and start selecting some of the ones that I think I'm going to have interest in, understanding that I can always go back and add more data. In some cases, we just want to bring in everything and have that all available. It really just depends on the use case here. So I'm going to bring in the channel dimension. Let's understand some of the geography. Certainly want to understand the product and product information. And then we'll get some store information, and let's bring the sales information as well. And what you'll see is I select each one of these tables. So we have the source column name and source data type. Again, just going to bring the data in as it is, not going to do any transformation or ETL on it. Want to maintain that data fidelity of what those fields are and where they're coming from, so we don't lose that in going from those source systems into Incorta. But you also see here we can do kind of an Incorta label and Incorta type. So again, we maintain that data fidelity of where it came from. But for instance, if we wanted to refer to sales amount as revenue instead, just make that label change there, and then it might be a little bit easier for the business or the IT organization or whoever's modeling these schemas, just so they have a common understanding of the fields that they're going after. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit next here. And then the last step before we kind of have our initial schema setup done and ready, I'm going to check this create joins box here. And what this is going to do is Incorta is actually going to go through the tables and try to understand what relationships it can decipher just out of the fields that are present in those tables. So I'll kind of show you what that looks like in just a second. But the first thing I want to do here is actually load up this data. So you see we have 7 tables. Incorta created 6 joins. So I'll go ahead and load this. Obviously, this is the first time we're loading the data, so I want to do a full load, want to get everything into Incorta and into the system. So I'll go ahead and start that, but we do have the option for incremental loads. So that can be specifically helpful with like large transactional tables, when you have hundreds of millions or billions of rows. You don't want to be reloading that every day or intraday, but really just be able to go grab those fields and rows that are updated since that last load in a matter of minutes here. So while that's loading, I'm just going to hop into the ERD here quick as well. And just to show you kind of what Incorta was able to do through that schema wizard here. Right, so I brought in these 7 tables, but I didn't actually have to define any of these relationships between the tables. Incorta was able to go in and see, we have these product keys, those probably join together, the store keys, channel keys, whatever it may be, but really just simplify that approach. So once we bring it in the data, really, just quicker speed to insight, we can really start and get to that exploration phase quite a bit quicker. I am just going to take notes of these joins on the fact sales tables because aside from what we already brought in, I am going to augment with a couple other tables and looks at the data as well. And I'm actually going to make an alias of this fact sales table, which will make a little bit more sense in a couple minutes here. And I'll re-add these joins to that next table kind of manually here. So get out of that. It looks like we're done loading. It took about 56 seconds. 3 million rows have been loaded up here. And now I'm ready to start kind of augmenting this data, bringing that external data and connect it to a few other things that will just give us some extra dimensionality as we're exploring this data here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to join back to a dates dimension that we have stored in Incorta. And really all that is just a table with a list of dates and those data attributes, the month, the quarter, the year, and everything that's associated with that date. Before I do that, though, I'm looking here at the date key in the sales table, and it's actually a timestamp. And I know that in my dates table itself, I just want to join to the date as a whole. But again, I don't want to change the source data. I don't want to, affect the shape of the data as it stands in the source system. So rather than change that column, I'm actually going to go in here and just create a new column for date. So when I do this, I can open up the formula builder here. And when I open this up, along the left-hand side, you're going to see all the different tables and columns that we brought into our schema here. In the middle, we kind of have the formula builder area. And on the right, we have the different functions available to us, some built-in variables. And a great feature I love on the functions here is when you click on one, you're actually going to get kind of a summary and an example of what that's used for and how to use it. So especially if you don't know exactly what you're looking for or not sure if the function is exactly what you want, kind of a quick view on how to use that. But for this, I'm going to look for a remove time. So we'll bring that in, and then I'm just going to search for that date key. Double click on that and hit save. And just go ahead and save that table. And just like that, didn't change that source data at all, but added another column that is in fact a date field so we can create that next join here. So I'll just go ahead and create that join. Here, we're going to select that fact sales table where we just created the date key and select that as the join condition. And then we're actually going to join this across schemas. So we're going to go into this Contoso date schema, select that dates table that has all that date dimensionality, and then we can select the date field to add that onto. All right, so we have one extra table kind of joined back to our data here. Two more I want to do here quick. So first of all, I mentioned making an alias of that fact sales table. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm actually going to join it back to that dates table, but just on a different condition to essentially offset it by year and make it really, really easy for us to do some year-over-year comparisons. So I'll just name this fact sales last year. And then I'm going to select that fact sales table as the one to copy over here. And then you'll see the new table that we just, or alias that we just added here, go into the schema here, still have those 20 columns and 3 million rows. I'll add the joins in a second here, but just something to note, we're not actually duplicating this data. So this is really helpful, to have different join conditions, use the same table for different use cases without actually duplicating that data and, running up your memory usage or disk usage as well. So real quick, I'm just going to manually add these joins back to the alias table here. And again, I took note of those joins on the original fact sales table, and I'm just going to remake those here. Can do it right on the table. So we were joined to the channel dimension, the product dimension, and the store dimension. So I'm just going to select those three tables and those keys. So there's the channel. Next, I will do the product. All right, and then I will go back to the store table as well. And then the last one I'm going to do here is, again, join back to that dates table. But again, instead of joining on the kind of normal date, I'm going to join back to the year ago date, which will just help to offset and let us use kind of current time dimensions to evaluate year-over-year performance. And then bear with me, we're almost getting to the fun stuff here. The last thing I want to do on the schema side is just bring in that external tax revenue. Again, just to augment the data that we already had within our database and kind of behind our firewall with some external data, just get some cut on what we can see about our business and how we look at the data in our business. So in this case, I'm just going to add another table directly from the file system. Here you can see a couple of the other options and places you can query a table directly from. But I'm going to select the file system, just grab from the local files to grab that tax revenue CSV file, this average gross income by zip code. I will add that table here, give it the same name. And then real quick, I mentioned when we were going through the schema wizard, we're able to change that data type in Incorta if necessary, but we can also do that on the table field as well. Not as worried about the data fidelity here as this is just a flat file we're bringing in. And I know zip code for our stores is a string, so I'm going to go ahead and just make that change here as well. Make sure we're comparing apples to apples and those join conditions are going to match. And then I can go ahead and load that data. That should just take a couple seconds here. All right, so loaded 28 rows in just a couple seconds there, 28,000 rows. And then the last thing I need to do before I move on is I'm just going to join this back to our store dimension. So for each store that we have a zip code in, we understand, kind of what that demographic is, what that income demographic looks like for that area. So I'm going to use one more join here, join that back to that store table, and again, going to join on that zip code. And I'll set that zip code to a key as it is unique in that average gross income table. And I will hit done. All right, and then one more time, I'm just going to hop back to that ERD here quick, that data diagram. So you can see the complexity increased a little bit here. We were able to kind of add those other joins and tables, back to this core schema. Again, keeping those relationships live. We don't actually have to query this data and run those joins. Those joins are built in through Incorta's direct data mapping, and those are going to perform to scale, whether we're looking at a couple hundred rows, couple thousand rows, or a couple million rows, whatever it may be. Those relationships are going to maintain, and Incorta is going to help to find the path of least resistance kind of through these tables, which we'll demonstrate when we get to the dashboard here. So technically, we're ready to start exploring the data and start to dig in. There's one other step I want to do kind of before we get to the dashboards here, though. So, we have 9 different tables, 7 million rows, but we also have over 100 different columns here. And for the typical, business analyst or business user, that's going to be a little overwhelming. And there's certainly going to be fields that aren't going to be useful for reporting. That could be update dates or just, flags or attribute fields that aren't actually used. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a business schema. So similar to the normal schema where we're taking a collection of tables and defining those relationships, in the business schema, we can actually create different views and just organize the fields, whether it's from one table, several tables, one schema, or several schemas, into those different functional areas, give it a nice business name, so the users that are actually going into there to create those dashboards know exactly what they're grabbing, and there's no question about where the data's coming from and what they're going after here. So I will go ahead and call this Contoso Sales Business View and hit save. And then I'm just going to start creating some views here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the schemas that I want to pull from. So we just created this Contoso Sales schema, also had these date dimensions here. So I'm going to bring in both of those schemas here, and then I can start to create some views. So the first one I'm going just to organize this a little bit, I'm going to start with a date schema. Expand that. Start with the date schema. We're going to go to that dates table and just bring over a couple of these fields that I think are going to be helpful today. So we'll bring over date, we'll bring over month name and month number, and we'll bring over year as well. All right, that looks good. Second view here, let's bring in some of that external data. So we can call this demographics. And we're just going to go to that AGI by zip table. So here we have adjusted or average gross income, kind of what income bucket that falls into, state and zip code. I actually want to bring all of these over. So I'm just going to drag that entire table into this view here. And we're looking good to go in that view as well. Next, we're going to do some sales attributes. And here I'm just going to kind of go down the list of the tables that I have in that schema and pick out the columns that I think are going to be useful. Again, understanding that I'll always add more columns after the fact here. So we're going to bring in the sales channel. We're going to bring in the region. Obviously, we just have zip codes for the United States, so we're going to filter the dashboard just down on the US in stores that we actually have US zip codes for. For the product, let's bring in the product brand name as well as the product name. Bring in product subcategory and category. Just drag this over so it's easier to see. The product category in there. Get the product subcategory. And then let's just bring in the store name as well. All right, and that's looking good as far as content here. But again, we have this chance to kind of label these fields as well. Obviously we know what channel name is, brand name is, but we could clean it up a little bit And also we often run into cases where, you know, in a source system, that field might just be called attribute or flex field or whatever that may be. So again, we just want to give these some nice clean business names so our users know exactly what they're grabbing here. So we'll call this channel, region, brand, product, category, subcategory, and store. All right, and so that one's looking good. And again, we're maintaining that data fidelity and where that source column is actually coming from. And my computer seems to be doing a bunch of things on its own right now. Give me just a second here, guys, sorry. Got back into Incorta, which it looks like it closed out of me. I apologize, I don't know quite what happened there. Would be a technology demo if the technology worked, isn't that right? Of course it's the computer, and it continues to kind of go crazy here. Ryan, do you mind if I take a minute? I might need to kind of log out and log back in here, get to a fresh page.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think there might be something in the air today here. This Zoom session might be contagious.
Yeah, I don't know who's controlling my screen here. It's a little scary, but yeah, let me just back out back in, and we can kind of get right back to it here, though. Give me just a moment here.
That sounds good. And Chris, as you're pulling that up, right, I think just to highlight kind of what Chris has walked through so far, I think where we're seeing a lot of value here is, bringing in complex data and being able to kind of provide that presentation layer with that business schema, like Chris had showed before. So we're finding a lot of success with enabling kind of that concept of self-service by deploying specific business schemas for specific functional roles, or we may break that down by specific use cases as well. So if you think about like a typical sales use case, right, you may have a lot of different sales use cases in your enterprise itself. So you may want to look at things from an executive dashboard view versus maybe a direct-to-consumer view versus a B2B, right? And so a lot of times what we would do, in a real project is we would create, those business schema views and provide kind of a layer for each of those, right? So if you could imagine as an end user, if I were only, responsible or interested in reporting on that D2C side versus the B2B side, I'd only have access to the proper business schema to really jump in there, and be able to kind of start that self-service exercise. And I don't have to worry about, starting from scratch and going through all the Excel gymnastics because I have it all in one spot, and I can really start my journey right from here. So, Chris, are we in a smoother spot now? The computer hack is done. You might be on mute, Chris, or a double mute or something there.
Can you hear me here?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, sorry about that. Hopefully we're good to go here. Appreciate you being able to pivot there here quickly. So again, apologize about that. Not quite sure what was going on with my computer there. I'm not going to kind of regrow through that process of creating the business schema here. I actually already have one built that mimics the one I was just building. So you can see I have our sales attributes, demographic information, our dates, and then the last one I was just going into was the sales metrics here as well. And the only thing I just want to highlight here quickly, so bringing in that current year and last year's revenue from that fact sales table as well as the alias we created, but then also creating a couple formulas here as well. So these are pretty simple, just taking the current year's sales minus the last year's sales to get that difference, as well as getting that year-over-year change amount as well. Just again, another cut at our data, another way to kind of slice and dice it. So once that business schema is created here, we can start a dashboard totally from scratch, from that content tab. But actually a great feature here, I can just click on Explore Data. And what that's going to do is that's going to open up an insight and bring up the fields and views that I just created here in that business schema. So I can go ahead and start creating insights now. And the first one I'm going to create is I'm actually just going to add a logo. So we have this rich text editor in here. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy image location from the internet, go and select the image, paste that location, and hit save. And then we can see that logo start to render in here. Go ahead and save that off. We'll save this dashboard and call it Contoso year-over-year sales. All right. And now we're jumped into this brand new dashboard here. So just going to do a couple housekeeping items here just to start. So first of all, I'm going to name this tab so we kind of know what we're looking at here. We can call this the year-to-date summary. And then I'm just going to set up a couple filters here. As I mentioned at the beginning, when I first showed the dashboard, we're really focused on a kind of a year-to-date and year-over-year revenue look for this dashboard here. So I'm just going to set up some date filters. So we're looking at that US data and we're looking only year-to-date. And for the purposes of the demo, I'm going to select a date at the end of last year, just so we get a little bit more data. I think it's a little more impactful when we're seeing, 11 or 12 months of data versus just, a little over one. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to select a kind of a less than date here. So let's apply these filters kind of across the dashboard here. So I'm going to select a date that everything is going to filter to be less than. So we're going to select date. We're going to say less than or equals to, and I'm just going to kind of select an arbitrary date here. We'll do December 1st of 2020. And then the last thing on the date side here is we're just going to select that date to be in the year of 2020. And again, going back just to get some more data here, but in practice, this will often be dynamic. So as you kind of go down throughout the year, it's going to continue to be that year-to-date, month-to-date, or quarter-to-date view dynamically without actually having to hard code or change those parameters each day when you go into the dashboard. And then the last one here, just going to bring in region. Again, we have those zip codes for the US. Want to make sure we're kind of comparing apples to apples here and have the data that's going to be applicable for the questions that we're trying to answer. So go ahead and save those filters here. And now I'm ready to start kind of adding insights and start exploring the actual data here. So I'm going to hit this plus button just to add an insight here. And the first thing I'm going to do here is maybe just get an idea of kind of where we sit year over year and how our revenue is split up throughout the business here. So I'm going to do a pie chart, and let's bring in the sales channel and look at the current year revenue by those sales channels. I think that looks good. Call this revenue by channel. You can go ahead and save that. All right, and another one I want to add here as well, actually, maybe even before that pie chart here, just add some top level KPIs. So right at a first glance, we're able to kind of get an idea of the business health year to date and year over year. So I'm just going to bring in this KPI insight here. And I'm really interested in all these insights, right? Current year, last year revenue, and those differences. So just going to drag those into the measure column here. And we'll see those filter through. You can name this KPIs. And looking good already, just want to do a few kind of formatting changes here as well. So first of all, let's maybe change these to dollar amounts and round them up just to clean things up a little bit. Ooh, might be happening again here.
Looks like we might have a Zoom security breach here. This is
yeah, I do not know what's going on here.
Demo until something goes wrong. So maybe while you're trying to pull that back up, Chris, we do have a couple of questions that I can go through and answer from the audience. So one of the questions is a great point. One of the questions here, someone pointed out a great point. Basically kind of highlighting that data from different systems is not always going to have the exact same data types. It may not just be easily joined like we showed today. And I think what you also saw there is Chris highlighted the ability to add manual joins as well. But if you want to take that a step further, right, and talk a little bit about ways to kind of normalize the data or do some data cleansing within Incorta itself, we have the ability to leverage those formula columns, which Chris also showed you, to remove, leading zeros and things like that, concatenate fields together to create unique strings to actually help with our join criteria. So that's one, kind of a simpler way to do things. We also have the ability to actually create materialized views within Incorta itself. And that's where you may actually introduce some of more of the traditional, kind of SQL integration that you might be used to today. And what's nice there is performance-wise, right? If you thought about kind of a productionalized system, we would be able to load our base tables much faster than we would typically, and then jump right into that MV, run that much faster than we typically would be as well, and then have the output of that MV actually join to the base tables. So you're still solving a lot of the complex issues from a data cleansing standpoint, but you're not losing that ability to actually drill into the transaction level detail when you need to. So it looks like, Chris, you might be back up and running here.
We'll give it one more shot here. Yeah, hope for the best again. Again, apologize about the technical difficulties. It is on the computer side here.
Yeah, no worries. Go for it, and we'll hopefully we don't get hacked again here.
Yeah, hopefully this is the last time we'll have to pivot here. So again, yeah, just gonna round off those dollar amounts, kind of change some of the formatting there. And on the percent change, obviously we're gonna change that to a percentage. And that's already looking quite a bit better here. But the last thing that's popping out right out to me is we have these negative values here, but really want those to kind of pop out to us, and understand that there might be an issue there. So just going to add some conditional formatting there. So when we say that when that's negative, when those are less than 0, we're going to make those red. We'll do that on the year-over-year revenue as well as the year-over-year change. Less than 0, make that red. All right, and then just going to do some kind of housekeeping here, just start to clean up these views a little bit. So we'll bring KPIs up to the top there, and let's make that just a little bit bigger. Save that off and continue to add some insights here. So have a look at revenue by sales channel. Because we're looking at year-to-date information as well as year-over-year, let's get a time series going as well. So I'm just going to select a time series graph here. Let's look at current year revenue and last year revenue. And we're going to group those by month. And we're just going to sort those month names by the month number, so it's going in order rather than alphabetically. And then also add in a drill through capability of date as well. So we can go ahead and call this revenue by month and date. We'll save that one here. Again, going to drag that up just to clean things up a little bit. Let's make the time series just a little bit larger there. And then the last insight I want to add to kind of this overall company year-to-date summary is just a detailed table. So you heard about this a lot during the Incorta panel, but again, that ability to go from those top-level KPIs down to that transaction-level detail. So again, here I'm going to be focused on that current year revenue. Let's bring in the date that those transactions occurred on. And then I'm going to bring in just all of these sales attributes that we have here right into the table as well. We call this sales detail. And then I'm just going to add a tolo to the bottom of the table so we can see how these transactions roll up to those top level KPIs. So go ahead and save that off. And then you'll see the detail table rendering at the bottom here. And again, as we were talking about in the panel discussion, right? So we have 2.9 or just over 2 billion in year-to-date revenue for the year. Also see that 2 billion down at the bottom and all the transactions that make up that amount, right? So we're seeing over 540,000 different transactions that are making up that total revenue amount. But also as we start to drill in, right? So say if we're interested in the store performance in seeing a big year-over-year gap here in October. That's what we want to drill into. We're going to see that goes down to $112 million in revenue, again, reflected in that detailed table down below. And again, filtered down from, over 500,000 rows down to those 33,000 rows in just a couple clicks in a couple seconds here. So this is, I think, a good start as far as a company overview and a company summary year to date, but want to dig in a little bit deeper into some of these product and store dimensions as well. So rather than starting from scratch, I'm actually just going to duplicate this tab and kind of get a head start on this next view here. So we'll rename this one. For this one, let's do store and product summary. And so I'm going to keep the logo, the KPIs, and that detailed table across the bottom here. Let me clear the filters we have added here quickly. But really just start to add a couple other insights and modify the insights that we already had built. So obviously I already have a look of revenue by channel. Maybe rather than channel, let's bring in that product brand name and just change the title there. And that's a little busy for me with the labels on the pie chart and the legend here. So I'm just going to remove that to clean things up just a little bit. All right, and that's looking better there. And again, already have that kind of time series year-over-year revenue look. So let's actually change this into kind of a drill down insight of revenue by product. We'll just change the title here. And we'll make this a drill through type insight as well. You know, so again, rather than month and date, let's bring in that kind of product hierarchy as well. So we can start at that product or product category level, go down to subcategory, and then finally down to that actual product. And then rather than a line chart here, let's move this to a column chart. All right, looking better. And then the last thing I do, I'm just going to sort by the current year revenue so we understand which categories, subcategories, and products are really driving those revenue numbers. So just going to add the sorting here for each level of the aggregation that this insight has. And I can go ahead and save that. All right, and then one more insight I just want to add here, understand kind of what we're looking at a store level as well. So for this one, let's do a bar chart. Just going to start at insight from scratch here. We're going to group by that store name. Going to look at that current year and last year's revenue. And right away, obviously, have a lot of stores here. I don't know about everybody else. That's a little bit too much data for me to wrap my head around all at once. So let's limit that down to maybe the top 10 stores. And then again, we're just going to sort by that current year revenue. So we get the stores that are, you know, driving the most revenue and driving the most business for us. Call this revenue by store. All right, save that off, and we'll just bring this up here next to some of the other insights across the top here. Change the sizing a little bit. All right, and then just like that, right, so now we have kind of a year-to-date, year-over-year look for our entire company, you know, kind of broad, high level. Also the ability to go down to the individual stores, brands, and you know, drill into those product categories as well. And again, kind of across the tabs and the dashboards, you'll see, you know, we have the 722 million here. We're going to get the same thing across at our top KPIs. And as we drill in, you'll see that filter through to the other tabs as well. So, you know, really good views and looks at how we're doing year over year in terms of revenue for our store, but also want to kind of augment that data with some external data as well. So you saw we brought in that average gross income by zip code. Just going to make a demographics tab here and start to visualize some of that data as well. Right, so remember, this wasn't data that was native to that database, something we were able to join up, you know, back to that core data in just a matter of minutes. And now we can go in and start visualizing and start to look through that new lens that we have. So the first thing I want to do is just get an understand of kind of what that income distribution is for our stores. So real quick, I'm just going to let's group this by the income bucket and order that as well, just so we get the lowest income buckets to the highest. And then we're going to look at, again, current year and last year revenue. Oops, sorry, just brought that into the wrong spot there. All right. So we'll call this revenue by income bucket and save that off. And then you can see right off the bat there, right, within just a couple seconds, we can understand, you know, from where our stores are located, these are the demographics that are in their surrounding areas. Gives us an understanding of just that distribution across stores. But I also want to go in more detail into those individual stores and the individual products as well. So I'll just add a couple more insights here. First, we're just going to do a table to understand kind of what the average income is for each of our stores. So here I'm just going to do an aggregated table. Let's bring in that store as a grouping dimension. Let's also bring in the state and zip code just so we have a kind of an understanding of where these stores are located. And we're going to bring in the average gross income as the measure here. And the first thing you're going to see is this populates here. So these are all the different zip codes we have in that external data. And obviously we don't have stores in each of those zip codes. So a cool thing I can do here is I'm just going to bring in a base field of store here. And all this is doing is it's telling Incorta, through that direct data mapping engine to route everything through the store table. So we're only getting, information for the stores that we actually have data for. And these stores that are outside the US that don't have zip codes, again, will be filtered out with that region filter we added at the beginning here. So we'll call this AGI by store. You can go ahead and save that. We'll drag that up next to that first column chart that we added. And then I just want to add a couple more insights here quick to understand kind of the product distribution as well. So I'm going to start with let's do another bar chart here. And in this case, let's look at that. Again, we're going to look at that kind of product hierarchy here, start at that category level, go to subcategory, and then down to products. We want to look at the revenue for the year, and we're actually going to have that colored by that income bucket. So for each of these product categories, and as we drill through to the subcategory or to the product, we can see that distribution and how the different demographics and where those stores are located translates into revenue throughout each of these categories. And one other quick thing I'll highlight here as well. So I can actually look at the query plan for the insight that we just built. So what we're looking at here are all the different tables that we're hitting in this insight, right? So we have 6 different tables that we're pulling from or pulling through to get this insight together. But again, I was able to just drag and drop those columns over there. I didn't have to run a query or wait for a query to run. Just able to drill those open, and it's going to populate right inside of Incorta here. So just I think a powerful visualization showing the power of that direct data mapping, and again, not having to do that coffee report where we run the query and go get a cup of coffee and have to wait for it to run, but really enable that self-service and allow you to kind of get in there and just play with the data and really dig deep into what you're looking for. So I'll save that one off, and just want to add one more insight here, just to highlight one of the new visualizations that Incorta has implemented here. Here you can see a lot of the different insights that are available. Obviously, just touching on a couple of them today, but always evolving, always looking for the next best thing and different ways to augment. Ooh, got to be careful here. Looks like we're good. So I'm just going to do the Sankey diagram here real quick. And this is really great for kind of understanding the flow. So in this case, I want to understand what the flow of revenue is from those different demographics. So I'll use that as my source, as that income bucket. See how that revenue flows into the product categories. Set that as my target. And we want to look at current year revenue. And I'll go ahead and say this here quick as well. And a little busy right off the bat. Let me just remove this filter to get out of home appliances. A little busy right off the bat, but what I really like about this one is you can actually hover over those income buckets and see, very visually, very clearly where that revenue is flowing and into what product categories that's flowing into. And can do that in reverse as well, right? If I'm curious about home appliances, curious where that flows, can click into that and very visually see kind of where the bulk of that revenue is coming from. So a lot of different visualization options here. And really, again, just to kind of level set and recap on what we went through, able to go directly from those data sources, create the schema, define those data relationships, connects to those external data sets, make different variations of the data without affecting the source shape of that data, to enable us to create that, business-friendly business schema, and ultimately create a dashboard with a kind of a company overview, a product and store deep dive, and leverage that external data as well. And that's all under an hour. We were able to do that, even with 2 departures for a computer that's freaking out that I am a little worried about and need to dig into further here. But again, just showing you the power of Incorta, even with those barriers, which are, always sure to come up, able to get to some insights and understand more about our business very quickly. So real quick, just going to hop back to the PowerPoint here, just to wrap things up before we open it up for questions here. We'll just pop back into this, go through. And so hopefully what you saw through that journey and being able to be agile, being able to connect to those data sources, quickly and efficiently, with all the implementation experience we've had over the years with Incorta, partnering with Incorta and this fantastic software. I mean, that speed to insight is really quick, as we just saw. A lot of our customers kind of need to see it to believe it. So certainly reach out to us if you want to set up something like a proof of concept. Certainly have had a lot of success actually getting our hands on our customers' data, showing how quickly, usually just, within that first day, able to connect to those source systems and kind of tie back and start to visualize data. happy to review kind of current pain points that you're having, compare that back to the experience we've seen at other clients, or even if you want to go more in on the technical side as well, happy to do that as well. So Matt Ingstrom is our dedicated Incorta rep. His contact information is on the bottom here. My contact information is in the deck as well. So please don't be a stranger. Would be happy to hear from you and discuss more. And you'll see a little more Incorta yet today. Obviously this kind of the sky's the limit here. A lot of data science activities, a lot of machine learning capabilities that are built into Incorta as well. So really the sky's the limit, and look forward to partnering, hopefully with more of you over the future here to really kind of give your organization an analytics boost and really improve that analytics journey. So I'll turn it back to see if there's any more questions here. Again, apologies for the technical difficulties here, but hopefully we're able to follow along and really see the insight and value that Incorta can bring. So Ryan, I'll take it back to you. Are there any other questions out there that need to be answered here?
Kohler may be temporarily unavailable, but it doesn't look like we have any other questions at this time. Thanks so much, Chris. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.